Please continue,
That
Bill.
was that was a British Tornado, the ones that we referred to before. They take off from one side of the airfield, and the F-15s take off from the other side. It's usually followed by a second tornado, and I think that's what we're about to hear now with the pause. One other note I'd like to make, and that is that we heard sirens here again for the third time tonight, but not in this part of the city. Reported to us by one of our producers.
Okay, Peter. Bill Rediker in Eastern Saudi Arabia. We're at 6:45 in the morning, am I right, Bill, or 5:45 where you are?
It's 6:45.
That's what I thought. It's the same time in Eastern Saudi Arabia as it is in Baghdad. Now, Tony Cordesman has been sitting with us again, listening to the Israeli ambassador, Zalman Shoval, on this question of who mounts a preemptive strike. From a military point of view, Mr. Cordesman, what's your comment?
I think it's very difficult for them to show great restraint, Peter. I think we have to remember something. We're not just talking about Scud missiles. We're talking about 3 different types of missiles. And as John McClethy pointed out, they located 2. The problem is we can't find the other types. They're much more mobile, or at least we had no indication of where they are. If somebody doesn't go out there, either U.S. or Israeli, they could fire again.
Is it your view that at the moment this will alter the U.S. plan of attack? If these are mobile missiles, and they're as difficult to find as you say they are, if you put the Israeli Air Force up and the U.S. Air Force, do you really double your capacity? Do you make it more confusing? Does it make it any easier for them to find?
I think you do make a significant increase in capacity, but again, we have a problem because we don't know all the details here. They may have been able to knock out most of the missiles with chemical warheads. It may be the shorter range systems with lower payloads, which may only be conventional, that are on the mobile launchers. There are a lot of really serious unknowns here.
Okay, and just before we get too deeply into it, or at least so far into it that I don't understand at all what I'm talking about here, is it, well, how long would Israel have after a missile had been launched? How much knowledge would it have before it actually landed in terms of minutes?
Well, we're talking a maximum of 5 to 6 minutes. That assumes that they have airborne radar and they can look very deeply. Probably they'd only have about 3 to even 1 minute's warning.
And as I think you said to us an hour or 2 ago, the best time to get the missile is on its way up, right?
The best way to get the missile is either on its way up when it's still slow, or best of all, while it's still on the launch.
Okay, Tony Cordesman, thank you very much. Just to repeat here now, what we've been talking about is this question of whether or not, or to what degree the Israelis have shown restraint by not mounting a preemptive attack against Iraqi targets. The Israeli ambassador in Washington saying that no other nation had been called on to show such restraint, and no other nation other than Kuwait, he said, had suffered so much from the Iraqi aggression. Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon.
Peter, the Pentagon has announced that additional missions were added to the number of U.S. sorties that had been planned to be flown against Iraq this evening and tomorrow morning Persian Gulf time, in order that the U.S. itself could undertake strikes against the mobile Scud missile targets in western Iraq, assuming they can be located. This is clearly an effort to soothe Israeli feelings, to mollify them, and hopefully, in the view of the U.S., to keep them from sending up missions of their own and joining, in effect, the war against Iraq.
Anything else there, Bill?
Yes, Peter. We now have official Pentagon confirmation that there was an Iraqi Scud missile launched against eastern Saudi Arabia this evening, and it was in fact successfully intercepted by a U.S. Patriot missile.
Does that mean that we can take it that the video we had from eastern Saudi Arabia earlier of something streaking up into the sky was a Patriot on its way to intercept a Scud?
You sure can, and I believe the explosion that was seen in that footage was the successful intercept.
Okay, this is what we saw some couple of hours ago. You have to go back really to the beginning of that video because you see something streak off into the sky, and it is a Patriot missile. Saudi Arabia is dotted with the Patriot missile. It is designed as a premier line of defense in the anti-aircraft defense system of the United States. It has never before been tested in battle, but there is one instance in which it has apparently been, as they might say, operationally successful. Bob Zelnick, any more?
That's it for this moment.
Okay,
Peter.
just remind me when we are going to get, as far as we know, our next briefing from the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Colin Powell.
That has not been indicated at this time. We are told informally that at about 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, there will be a briefing here, but not, as I understand from General Powell, it's from someone else on the J2, his staff, but a quite senior officer. Tomorrow morning in Riyadh, we're told there will be a briefing, and I guess the folks there can tell you who the briefer will be. I understand it may be Schwarzkopf.
Thanks very much. General Norman Schwarzkopf, who is the commander of all Allied forces in the Persian Gulf. We have a couple of other pieces of video to show you in the remaining minutes of this hour, but just to tell you that at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, in about 7 minutes from now, local ABC stations all around the country will have a chance to do their local news, much of which, of course, will involve the Persian Gulf. And then at 11:30, Ted Koppel will be along with a special edition of Nightline as our continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf continues. The two pieces of video I'd like to show you now we've just come in now from the first damage video from Tel Aviv as a result of some of the missiles which were launched by the Iraqis tonight and fell on Tel Aviv. The Israeli military spokesman has said on the radio a couple of times that the casualties were light, that there were 7 people perhaps who we do not know, either military or civilian, though the Israeli ambassador in Washington said they were civilians who were injured. We cannot give you any indication by looking at this video precisely what was hit. But as you've heard from everybody of a military nature on this broadcast, the Scud is in the main, particularly the refined Scud, it's been refined by the Iraqis for a longer range, is a notoriously inaccurate missile. And the Israelis have been very guarded about giving out any of their targets, lest the Iraqis pick up any intelligence as to where the missiles they aimed wherever actually landed. We do know this is a southern suburb of Tel Aviv. You heard the Israeli ambassador said this is largely a working-class suburb. It is not altogether too far from the ABC News Bureau in Tel Aviv, which is on the main road outside of Jerusalem. Israel, by the way, has the Patriot missile provided by the United States. To the best of our knowledge, it has not been used this evening, but we don't know very much about Israeli defenses at this point. And just before the end of the hour, here is perhaps the most dramatic picture that we have seen all day. This is what it looked like when the attack on Baghdad began 28 hours ago. This video recorded from one of the upper floors of the Al Rashid Hotel in western Baghdad, where the International Press Corps, that portion of it which remains, has been. And just take a look at what it looked like and listen to what it sounded like to the people on the ground. What American pilots described as looking like 104th of July. Everything but the kitchen sinks had one American pilot coming up through the clouds. But General Bernard Traynor and Tony Cordesman, our two military analysts who have done such yeoman analytical work for us throughout the day, have said in considerable length tonight that while they pick up some clues here as to the capacity of the Iraqi anti-aircraft capability, General Traynor said this is the kind of thing that low-flying helicopters might face in Kuwait if they try a land invasion there. But Tony Cordesman saying to us that what you see here is, as much as anything else, an uncoordinated and unregulated show.